Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. Apologize, I'm a couple seconds late. I am running with my head cut off a little bit today, but if you come to my trainings all the time, you know that usually I'm rocking and rolling. So I have all the material ready. I'm good to go on the training. I just wanted to pull up one thing to make sure I can get an audio visual check. So if I can get that from those of you out there, give me 2 seconds. By the way, if you're coming in from YouTube or anywhere else, I'd love to have you connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where we are able to engage a lot with different people. Okay, today we're going to be talking about improving your procurement readiness. And so looks like I'm good to go. I'm getting the high sign from audio visual. So let me go ahead and take a breath, catch up, and we'll get started in today's training. So today, again, we're going to be talking about procurement readiness in the federal market. And this is a pretty interesting topic for me that I like covering down on because I think people sometimes misunderstand what it means. Sometimes we think we're a little farther ahead or farther behind. And so that's why I wanted to pick this topic. And I figured I'd start off with just, what is procurement readiness? What do we mean when we say procurement readiness? And on one side, like your side, it might be you just think, hey, I got a willingness to sell. I'm procurement ready. I'm ready to get rock and rolling in the government space. I hear there's trillions of dollars. Let's have at it, right? And I get that, right? I started a business, the first one I started a long time ago, and it's kind of how I came into it. It's a big market. What can we do? Well, that's one way of looking at procurement readiness, but that's your way. What's really important is their way, and I talk about them. In particular, I'm talking about federal agencies or large primes, if you ever want to work with them, et cetera. But for other people, procurement readiness to them means a reduction in risk. If they work with you, your procurement readiness, how ready you are for procurement with them, is really a reduction in risk. And we can talk about that in different levels. One of the things I want you to keep in mind as we go through today's training is that I'm giving you my opinion on procurement readiness, right? It's coming from a lot of expertise, both on the last 5 years teaching people and the last 20 plus years doing it as a small business owner. But I'm trying to find this balance between all the things we could do. I mean, I had a list of a ton of stuff, and that's my short list back there. But I had a list of a ton of stuff, and I started looking. I'm like, well, that's not necessarily procurement ready. That's just a really good idea, but it's not hardcore ready procurement readiness. And so that's what I want to try to stick to today is what are the things that are really measuring in people's eyes your procurement readiness. One tip I wanted to give people who were retiring out of the military and starting a company, or you're coming out of a large business like Microsoft or Booz Allen or whatever, don't confuse your experience with being procurement ready, right? You used to do it one way, and now you're coming into our world. My favorite are when people come from the large businesses down and become a small business. I'm like, yeah, the one thing you lose, the most important thing, is you no longer have a business card that you can walk in with. It says, hey, I'm Neil McDonald from Booz Allen. Booz Allen's name opens a lot of doors. But no matter how experienced you are, 20, 30 years, when you become a small business owner, you're starting at the beginning with the rest of us. The difference is you've got a lot of experience that can help you maybe accelerate faster, but you still have to demonstrate your procurement readiness to people. So in today's training, I'm going to cover down on a few topics, right? The first thing is just a reaffirmation of why it's important to understand and pay attention to procurement readiness. So I'm going to talk about that, why you should care. The second thing I want to talk about, and the second, third, and fourth things, are these 3 stages of procurement readiness that I described. And this is the first time I'm doing something related to procurement readiness in particular. And I have a lot of material I'm going to start doing over the next couple of months that really refine the way I teach this. But basically, these 3 stages are about when you get started in government contracting, when you're ready to be prime contracting with federal agencies, and when you're ready to start working with larges. And so those are the 3 stages. The reason I do this is because all 3 of these stages, your procurement readiness is seen in a different way. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting, it's not a secret, it's just a process. When we follow a process, A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results, and that's what I want for you. Do me a favor right now as we're going along, help buyers remember who you are. Put your company name into the chat. Put a core competency in there, 2 or 3 words. I'm actually taking a look at the chat for 1 second just to see if I see some. So like right here, Devin, he's got, cyber IT web development. He's telling us his designations, and he's got GSA vehicle. That kind of stuff is really helpful in there, right? Just looking at some of the other folks who are putting it in, make sure you put your information in. This is your community. I want you to engage in the community. When you see people, say hi. That's a great way to get started. I make introductions left and right. Earlier this week, I think yesterday, the day before, and it can only be one of those 2 days because the week's still in the middle. Somebody came in and said that, I know what it was. We're doing LinkedIn. I think I looked at their LinkedIn profile online with all of you in yesterday's training. And I said, oh, look, she does acquisition support, right? I know that. And I got a customer who does that. I can put them together because one's an 8A acquisition support and the other's SDVO, and maybe they could benefit from each other. But it was because I was able to see her information. Unfortunately, she was in the training. I didn't even know she was in the training, but she was in the training and able to reach out to me, and I made this introduction. I don't want you all reaching out to me for all the introductions. Help each other get introduced to people by putting the information into the chat. Okay, let's get rocking and rolling into the meat of today's training. First thing I want to talk about is just why you should care about procurement readiness and begin to understand this, right? There's no right answer and wrong answer with procurement readiness, but there are fundamental things that you should be tracking. So the first thing about procurement readiness that I really want you to pay attention to is that perception is reality. Remember what I said a second ago, is that for us, we think the fact that we show up means we're procurement ready, right? That's it. I got a product to sell or a service to sell. I'm procurement ready. I'm ready to sell you. I'm ready for you to procure. Well, that's not quite the way that life works, right? Certainly not how buying and selling works in this world. And so the perception is reality. And what I mean by this is how the other person is perceiving you, how the federal buyer is perceiving you, or how potential teammates are perceiving you. How they see you is the reality. It doesn't matter what you think, right? And so when you realize that, and when you care about procurement readiness, you're going to begin to, this whole idea of seek first to understand, then to be understood. In this case, if I paraphrase it a little bit, seek first to see how procurement ready they think we are, and then try to say how procurement ready we are, right? But I love the fact that if you're paying attention to procurement readiness and you're trying to figure out, where you're at and how they perceive us, well, if they perceive us differently than we think we are, who cares? That's great. They're going to give us guidance. They're going to say, oh, you're missing this and this. Otherwise, you'd be procurement ready. I won't even argue with them. I'll run off, do it, and come back and say, I'm procurement ready. So you're going to buy from me now, right? So it's not that quick, but literally, that's why it's so good to understand how they see you. The second reason you want to care about procurement readiness is if you don't care about your own procurement readiness, and if you don't care about understanding where you are on the journey of becoming more and more procurement ready, then you're going to waste a lot of time. We do this all the time. Here's a classic example, is that you're a brand new business. You come into government contracting, right? For those of you who are already getting traction, then you can remember what it was like. But you come in, you've got no past performance at all in the federal market. You rush straight to an agency and say, hey, I want to start winning contracts. You go to SAM, you start downloading RFPs that are out there, or RFQs, and you just start bidding right to the government. But you haven't taken a second to go, am I procurement ready? How is the buyer going to perceive me? Are they going to perceive me as this huge risk, this massive unknown, right? Well, if you follow kind of these stages that I teach, then you'll be able to go this direction. By the way, what I teach, what's unique about it is how I present it. But I don't present some completely proprietary way of doing business. I look and I keep refining industry best practice, how industry talks about it, how me and my peers out there talk about what you should be doing as a business, and how contracting officers, small business professionals, even program office people on the buyer side, how they talk about, in this case, procurement readiness and what it means to them. So if you don't pay attention to that track, and if you don't work yourself steadily up in the maturity level of procurement readiness, then you're going to waste a lot of time knocking on doors that aren't going to answer, or they'll answer you, but they won't ever give you a contract. And you'll struggle a year, 2 years, wondering why you're not getting a contract. But if you understand your procurement readiness, you understand 2 things: where you fit to have the most chance of success, and 2, what you can do to move to the next level. So the third thing I want to talk about, and this goes pretty much to what I just said, right, is if you take the time to care about your procurement readiness, then you're going to establish a plan. You're going to figure out, what are the bricks I need to put in place to create a strong foundation so that I'm procurement ready at this level, stage 1. And then What are needed to go to stage 2 to have an even stronger foundation, even more thorough procurement readiness for the next group that I'm trying to reach. If you care, you're then going to be able to figure out the things you need to do. And then you also, if you care about your procurement readiness and trying to understand where you're at, by the way, even if you're a $20 or $30 million firm, please don't assume that you're procurement ready, because your next big challenge is graduating out of small to large. Are you procurement ready to play in the pros? Right? Not that 50 million and below is not pros, but you're going to a whole nother league, whatever that is, the All-Stars. So anyways, if you do care though, you're going to establish a plan. It doesn't matter whether you're just getting in or you've been established and you're getting ready to graduate small to large. You still want to have a plan to go, how do I get to that next level of procurement readiness? Okay, so let's talk about 3 stages I'm going to try to cover down, and I'm just watching my time here. If it's your first time with me, I do 12 to 12:30 East Coast, and so I always end on time, even if it's a hard stop. I want to make sure you're able to go to your next meeting. So the first stage of procurement readiness, and I'm just beginning to kind of label these, but these 3 stages align to the 3 ways that I say that you can make money in the federal market. Right. So in the federal market, you can make money one of 3 ways: subcontracting under a small business, prime contracting with an agency, or subcontracting under a large business. Those are 3 different paths to the money. Subcontracting under a small business is nowhere near the same as subcontracting under a large business. So I separate them out instead of saying just subcontracting in general. But when you do that, whether you sell product or services, construction, etc., it's the same 3 paths to the money. And because I see those 3 paths that way, right, I then sit there and say, well, what's the procurement readiness criteria for this stage? What's the one for this stage? And what's the one for the next stage? Please keep in mind, this is not a definitive list. I'm trying to give you a taste of procurement readiness at each stage. As I go along, I'll have more stuff out there for you. Actually, I forgot to say, if you'd like me to do a score of your procurement readiness, we have a procurement readiness scorecard we're going to release. So just put PR scorecard into the chat. And when it's ready, I'll let you know. Okay, so let me come ahead. So stage 1, let's talk about stage 1. These are fundamentals, right? And that's, you have to begin with the fundamentals to move forward. And by the way, I know companies doing 10, 20, 30 million that aren't complete with all 6 of these, right? Literally, they're making 20 plus million and they're not at this stage. I'm not knocking them. I'm saying, hey, come back because your foundation is missing a few bricks. I just want you to have a strong foundation. So the very first thing you must have to be procurement ready with anybody, but in particular when you're getting started, is you need to know what you sell. And so here I just said a proven niche. You need to know what you're selling, what you're good at, right? Just if you're like me and you came out of a career doing something, just turn around and start a business in it, and that's pretty easy, right? I started with network engineering, right? That was my whole space, and it led to SharePoint, which was my second government contracting firm. What's yours? What's your proven niche? If you just said 2 words, right, into the chat, this is my proven niche. If you're coming at business in a different way, then you really need to think about it. The big thing I want you to do, though, is watch out for having too much in your niche. Bring it down. Don't say construction. Say flooring or elevator maintenance, right? Something specific. That's a niche, and that's vital because that will help you with every conversation you have going forward. The second thing, fully register in SAM. Yes, we all are in SAM. Yes, we all get started, right, when we want to sell to the government, but we're not all fully registered. An example of not being fully registered in SAM is if you go into SAM, the default is no, I do not accept credit cards. An example, that should be yes. Of course, we all accept credit cards. It doesn't mean I'm actually taking that work, but yes, put in that you accept credit cards. That's an example of maturity. If you can't accept a credit card, then how can you accept $1 million contract, right? And then also going in and looking at your NAICS codes. It's saying, hey, do I have the right NAICS codes in there? Are my NAICS all related to each other? Do they relate to that niche? The third bullet here for getting started, right, on procurement ready, if you're going to go knock on anybody's doors, right, in particular smalls here, but is your DSBS profile, is it complete? I was just talking with somebody this morning about, in fact, it was a person I made that introduction to. I just said, I went and looked at their DSBS profile. Before I make an introduction, I want to see if I can give them any quick tips before they move forward so that, they all have a good meeting. And I noticed that when you click on the capability statement for her profile, it didn't work. This is what I mean by DSBS profile being complete. Go in there, look at this. It's the #1 market research tool in the federal market. Don't treat it like it's some insignificant part of your business. It is a very important part. But the other reason is when you complete DSBS, the Dynamic Small Business Search, when you complete that, by the way, in connect.sba.gov, when you complete that, it will force you to be really clear about the niche. There are 2 fields in there, capability narrative and special equipment. But basically those 2 questions are, those 2 fields are where you can answer the question to your customers and to teammates. What do we do? Well, here's our niche, but here it is in a narrative format. So have that complete profile. And then a capability statement. When you hand it to somebody, they must be able to understand in 6 seconds what you do. That means your capability statement needs to be 14-point font or bigger. That's a hard thing for people to understand. But I say that your capability statement is not there to inform people. Its purpose is only to get a meeting. Its purpose is not to be a white paper and to tell your whole story. That's your job, right? Your capability statement should be in 6 seconds, communicate, this is what we do. So the other person can go, yeah, no, that's not me. Or they can go, oh, yeah, that's me. Or that's not me, but it's Jane, right? You want them to be able to make that decision in 6 seconds or less. And when you have too many words, it's hard to do. But when you do it right, I have a whole training on each one of these things I'm saying, by the way. I have a lot of training that dives into exactly how do you do it, not just conceptually, but step by step, how do you create a 6-second capability statement? Number 5, have a LinkedIn profile and a company page profile on LinkedIn. Both of those should fundamentally mimic the capability statement. Just go watch my training yesterday. And today's the 15th, right? So go watch my previous training on November 14th. That was how do you rock LinkedIn for government contracting. And then the last thing, number 6, for procurement readiness. And this is a perception. Remember, it's going back to perception. The reason I put domain for website and email is because there's so many of us who use Yahoo or Gmail. I didn't even know Yahoo still existed, right? This MSN or AOL even. Don't use those. When you use those, it makes you seem like you're not ready for the big leagues. And the federal market is the big leagues. If you want to sell to your local dentist, down the street, that's not the big leagues, right? It's totally okay to use MSN and Gmail there. But when you're coming up to the big leagues, there's a whole level of maturity, because when you have a domain, it begins to mean you have other back office tools. And it starts with just a domain, right? I'm not saying have all the back office tools in place, but at least have a domain that says govconchamber.com, right? It's like, hey, that looks like a professional organization. When you have those in place, this is what I'm suggesting is all you need to go subcontract under small. Now you're procurement ready, because you can go tell your story to a small business to try to get in the door. You don't need anything else, nothing else, because basically at this stage, you're just trying to get a job. But instead of having a W-2, you want it to be a 1099 job. And instead of being a 1099 to you job, you want it to be a 1099 to your company job. And that is called subcontracting, right? I know it's simplifying the process, but that literally is what it is. Subcontracting is 1099 under another company. Well, so you want to go out when you're just getting started and sell your company and selling it through your expertise. When you do these 6 things, you'll be able to do that, and you're communicating to that other small business that we're procurement ready. And usually they won't want anything else. They won't even ask you for anything else. They'll just go, oh, that's what you do? We need that. That's perfect. Let's talk. Okay, so let's talk about stage 2. This is when you're starting to move into the federal agencies. And again, I'm not trying to have this definitive list of all the things you could possibly have in here. What I'm trying to do is just put in your mind, when you go knock on the door of a federal agency buyer, there's certain levels of procurement readiness that they look at you. The way they perceive you is a little bit of a checklist, right? So the first thing I put, by the way, they look for all of these. So going forward, everybody moves forward. All the bullets move forward. I just don't want to restate them. In addition, right, they look for past performance. Let me back up 1 second. I apologize. Back up. Okay, right here, one thing I forgot to put is they don't look for past performance, but they do look for experience. If you're coming in saying, hey, we do web development as an example, or I do web development, then you need to be able to at least talk to that story. Or you need to say, hey, we're a staffing company. We don't really do that. But some level of experience is all you really need at this level. When you move forward to stage 2 and beyond, you need past performance. And the 3 stages or 3 streams of making money in the federal market: small business subcontracting, agency priming, and large business subcontracting. What I tell you is get your past performance in a small business as a subcontractor under a small business. When you get that past performance and you bring it to an agency, they look at you and say, okay, you got experience in the federal market. Better yet, if you can have that experience within their agency as a sub, so that when you try to get a prime, they're looking at you saying, okay, you got experience, right? And keep in mind, I'm talking about whether you're going after a $500,000 contract or a $500 million contract. It's pretty much the same thing from a past performance. They just look for bigger, more relevant type of past performances. But fundamentally, they're looking for experience. Could you possibly get a contract without a past performance? Yes, but that's not what I'm here to talk about, because that's the exception. The norm is to get experience as a subcontractor under a small, then go to an agency and say, hey, I got experience. Not just that, I got it in your agency. Let me work with you. And so now you get prime contracts within the agency and you start developing relationships with larges, right? So the second thing that they need for procurement readiness, if this is a requirement for you, in particular, I think with construction, is bonding, right? If you're a service-based business, number 5 is for us, is the proper insurances in place. Yes, everybody has some, but I always had like errors and omission insurance. That way, if I was messing with the agency's data and I destroyed it all, there was, ways they can come back, tap into it. But their bonding and insurance is fundamentally and I know this is a loose thing, but fundamentally the same thing, right? It's protecting the background. So having those in place is a sign of procurement readiness. This is why I say when you go into DSBS, make sure you're filling out the bonding sections for construction and service. Let them know you are insured. It's subliminally saying, hey, we're procurement ready. Number 3, right, is security clearances. If you're going to work with agencies that require security clearances, then having them is important. So if you're looking at going into DHS as an example, they tend to have their own unique security clearance, but you need to have clearances in there or your people. This is why it's good to subcontract under a small at DHS so you can get some of your people cleared, and then you go to get prime contracts and you already have that process, right? And then FCL, that stands for facility clearance level. And basically what it means is it's the company's security clearance. And so as you try to go after DoD contracts in particular, they might require facility level clearances. And having that will demonstrate that you are at a certain procurement level, procurement readiness level. This is why I say that if you're a small business, one of your targets when you're subcontracting under other small businesses is to try to get your facility clearance. Find a small business that is willing to work with you so that you can bring your expertise and they bring their informal mentoring and guidance towards things like getting a clearance level. Number 4, organizational level certifications begin to increase it, right? So as you go after more and more restrictive contracts within the agency, they might require that you have ISO certifications or CMMI for software development. As CMMC ever comes out, right, they might have CMMC level requirements. So knowing what those requirements are and having them begin to communicate to the agency that you are a procurement ready firm. This is that subliminal or perception that they'll have. This is why it's important when you think about differentiators on your capability statement, it shouldn't be fluffy statements like we're the best of the best or something. It should be, we have an ISO certification, right? We have CMMI. That's a differentiator, right? You can get into these other abstract differentiators, but having a top secret facility clearance is a differentiator. It means I can get you on my contract right away. And you got people who are cleared, that's even better. You don't need to make your differentiator so confusing. So having those organizational certifications, though, communicate to the agency that you're procurement ready at an even higher level. I already said number 5. Number 6 is working relationships with teammates. And so this is important as you start going after larger and larger contracts and you want to have subcontractors on. Let's say you're going after 10 or $100 million contracts. An agency will look at you. Sometimes you'll see it written directly in the RFP, but an agency will look at you and go, oh, you have worked together with these companies. You have worked together with this large. You're not just some random team coming together. That's good. And it increases your procurement readiness because you're reducing the risk. Remember at the beginning, I said, in my opinion, procurement readiness basically means a reduction in risk. And so if you're able to show that you've got working relationships with GDIT or Booz Allen, for example, then you're able to demonstrate at these larger contract levels that you don't have to figure out how to work with another company. You don't have to figure out how to hold them accountable or how to do the finance and billing, et cetera. And the last one is agency experience, right? So if number 1 is past performance in general and then the federal market, number 7 is about specific agency experience. This is demonstrating yet even at a higher level that you're procurement ready. If the government looks at an incumbent in their agency, all the walls come down about the risk. I mean, they might look over at the CPARs just to confirm, but if you're an incumbent and you've won again, then they're looking at you saying, you've got experience in our agency, the risk reduction has gone down to almost nothing, or we've reduced the risk down to nothing because I trust that you'll probably be good for my future contracts because you've been good for past contracts with the agency. Again, if you want to get the full scorecard I'm going to do, it's free, but I don't have it ready yet. So just let me know if you want it. Put PR scorecard into the chat, and I'll let you know when we have that. So let's talk about stage 3. I've got just a few minutes left. Stage 3 is when we move to large primes. The reason I say holding off until you're really ready to start pursuing subcontracting with large primes is because they're the most risk averse. The government literally is way more willing to take chances with small businesses coming in, the unknown factor. They have a mission around that. The larges, on the other hand, have to be told you have to work with smalls, right? So if it was up to them, they wouldn't work with smalls unless they had an absolute need, where the government sees the value of small businesses and wants to bring them in and develop us as businesses and develop the supply chain. Not to knock the whole large community out there, but the government has a little bit easier chance, or they're more relaxed on working with small businesses that are a little bit more on the unknown side, where large is way more restrictive, which is fine. That's where you want to be. That's when you're getting to the big level of subcontracting. So when you go in, this was so important, I brought it back. Number one, they want to know that you have a niche. Large businesses do not need to have a business come in and subcontract with them that can do everything. They can do everything. They want to know, if you come in, where would you fit, right? They have a bus and they're driving the bus. They want to know, should you be on the bus? And if you're on the bus, what seat should you be in? Having a niche will make it really easy for them to go, oh, we can put you in this seat and that's good for us. The second thing, same thing as with the agencies, they want to see past performance. They want to know that you've done the work, you've been paid for it within the federal market, that you know how to work in federal agencies, that you've gone through a lot of the activities. That past performance will demonstrate it to them. More than an agency, larges want to see that you've done this work within the federal market. Number 3, security clearances. Same as the agencies, they want to see that you have clearances, that you can hire people and manage their security clearances, et cetera. That you have an FSO, facility security officer. I think that's what it's called. But an FSO, I've been saying the acronym so long, I forgot what the word is. Somebody put it in the chat for everybody else. But same thing with number 4, right? Org chart. Let's go to number 5, though. This is a little bit more unique for larges, right? They really want to see financial stability. At certain levels, maybe an agency might want to see it, but at almost all levels, larges want to see it. They want to know, in particular, that you can pay your employees. Right? And I'm not speaking on behalf of them. You can go watch videos I've done where I've interviewed larges out there. I think on LinkedIn, on my profile, in the featured section, you'll see the last one that I did. It had like 4 or 5 large primes in there, and they were talking about what they need. And this is where I started really driving this home to industry, is letting you know financial stability is a huge concern of theirs. What if the government doesn't pay for 30, 60, 90 days? Can you pay those employees so they're not disgruntled? Can you pay them so we can keep them? Because the large has accountability to the government to serve the mission. But if the small who is subcontracting with them, if you cannot make sure your people are paid for 30, 60, 90, 180 days, if anything possibly came up, then the risk increases that they won't be able to deliver to the government. And so basically I call this access to funding, right? You should be having a relationship with a bank where you have access to lines of credit, whatever you want to call it, whatever the term is. But when I had my business, it just kept going up. The bigger our contracts were, the more the bank was willing to give us money. By the way, I prefer small banks, not the largest banks, because they don't talk to you, right, until you have all the money you need. So definitely frequent your local bank, but make sure you have financial stability in place. Same thing with insurance. Number 7, and this is some of the back office stuff, right? They're really looking for, do you have maturity in your processes, in running your company and tracking your people in the HR side and retention? Do you have financial books that you're actually going to be able to track the cost of doing business so that they can track the cost of working with you as a sub? These back office activities are really important. So this whole list, by the way, I'll put it into the scorecard. I just want to make sure I'm tracking on the time here. I got like 5 seconds left, and just letting you know that the things I want you to remember from today's training is that you want to proceed through each stages of these procurement readiness. Go back and look at them and go, have we done this? Don't let a brick be missing lest you fall apart. If you ever get a chance, ask a contracting officer directly, what do you consider procurement ready? Just get their feedback and write it down as a checklist. And the last thing is, again, put PR scorecard, please, into the chat if you want me to let you know when that scorecard's ready so you can measure your own procurement readiness. I'm out of here. Time's up. I will see you in the next training.